media, proper political structure, stuff like that, religion. I see a need for that. Because this is where we're creating policy. In the real world, though, we recognize that there has to be a certain sense of flexibility. But one of the problems is, listen, there's just too many rules. You know, in order to get your dissertation, is it really the case that you have to write a dissertation and do quals and do field research and do a defense and, you know, can we get rid of one of those things? Maybe. Right? So I totally understand some of the complications. Okay. Next is, so hopefully that makes sense. I think it should. It's pretty clear. It should be. All right. So considerations for an ethics of care in qualitative research. Some of the things that you want to take into account in discussing ethics of care. The first point is concerning a weakness in the ethics of care. Right. Number one, participants. Let me give you an example. Participant that has assumed the role as a caregiver, researcher might allow the participant to express his or her difficulties in assuming the role of the caregiver, right? If we're talking about an ethics of care, and we're specifically talking about, and there's a lot of research that concerns caregiving, right? You want to make sure that you give the participant the opportunity, if it exists, right? You're not trying to posit it if it's not there, but if it exists, you do want to give and you want to legitimize the participant's grievance that this obligation of being a caregiver is a burden, right? It's, you know, I love my spouse, I love my uncle, I love my dad, I love my brothers, whoever, but it was an exhaustive process, you know? And I feel bad for saying it, but when the person died, it was a bit of a relief. Wow, what a horrible thing to say, right? No, you don't say what a horrible thing to say. If that's what the participant really feels, right? Like, I really, really love this person, but insofar as the person is passed and the person's now deceased, I grieve for their loss. I grieve for the loss of my loved one, but I also recognize that there's a certain sense of liberation that I no longer have to assume this role as a caregiver, right? It's a very complicated situation to be in. That's the beauty of being a human being, right? The beauty of being a human being is that there isn't a contradiction in saying I both love someone and I was glad to see that person die, because it freed me up from having to exhaust all of my care for this individual. It's precisely that makes being a human so worthwhile, because of the apparent contradiction in the claim, right? And there really isn't a contradiction, right? I can both love someone and be rather reserved in my loss, in my sense of grief, that the individual has died, because I recognize there's a sense in which I've been liberated from the act of caregiving. It might be the case, however, that another participant totally relished the role of being a caregiver. And the fact that they lost the loved one is magnified. It's even more profound of a loss, because insofar as I lost a loved one, not only did I lose that individual, but I lost my identity as caregiver. So now I'm even more depressed, right? I'm doubly depressed. It's not that one account is better qualitatively than the other account, that the person who feels twofold remorse from the person who feels sort of liberated for the loss, that the person who feels liberated is worse off. No, it's a different human experience, right? It's a different way in which a human being interpreted his or her role to the other as caregiver. Both equally viable, both meaningful, right? So just to sort of, just hopefully to get you to recognize as a researcher, as a new sort of novice qualitative researcher, that there's so many possibilities that are there, and that you should always give the participant the opportunity to discover, right? To discover. I mean, the interview is an opportunity for discovery. You know, I'm really glad you asked me that question. I never thought of it in that way. You know, maybe in a sense, yeah, I wasn't in pain that he passed, but then again, I recognized that, you know, I was able to go off and do the things that I wanted to do with my life. So it wasn't as bad as maybe I thought it was. Pretty good finding, right? So the point is, we're not here to make assumptions. What we're here to do is we're here to probe the participant ethically, which I've discussed already, what I think is sort of ad nauseum. We're here to probe the participant ethically, with concern, with tact, to elicit from them meaningful, rich narratives that describe their personal lived experiences. Okay. Example interview question, for example, in assuming your new responsibility, do you feel that you've lost a part of yourself? Simple, right? In assuming your new, this is just one question, and I'm not saying it's the greatest question, but for example, in assuming your new responsibility as caregiver, did you feel that you lost part of yourself? Well, what do you mean? Blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, actually, I felt I did. No, not at all. I mean, I was more than welcome to prepare for the role, blah, 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 blah. The question itself is only a tool to elicit that response. Based on that response, I'll be able to think, okay, was this person acting altruistically? Was this person acting egoistically? Is it fair to say that the person was acting egoistically? Is it fair to say that the person was acting altruistically? Let me find out. Question number 2. On and on and on. With respect to the researcher, as a researcher, we can become very attached to our work. I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you. As a researcher, we can become very attached to our work. We must be sure, as researchers, to take great care in preserving our identity outside of our work, outside of academia. Friends, family, spirituality, religion, to avoid burnout. Why? As researchers, we are equally in participating in qualitative research, be it qualitative interviews or what I'm doing right now. Right? This is a very, very large longitudinal research program that I'm engaged in now. It's research on myself, really, is what it is. Jason, let me see what you can do to, it's weird to say it out loud, right? But it's like, let me see what you can do to further qualitative methods research, to further education in the world. Right? This is something that I am very attached to, right? Just like the participant might be attached to another participant in a sense of care. And it's care that's binding the participants to accept this responsibility. It's care, my care and your care, specifically for our work as social scientists. It really is care that motivates me to get in front of the camera, to turn on all these lights, to sit up in front of you for hundreds and hundreds of hours and lecture. It really is care. But there is a sense in which the participant can be burned out. The caregiver can be burned out by having to care. I have to bathe her. I have to feed her. I have to bathe him. I have to feed him. I have to wash him. I have to take him places. I have to help change the individual. Just as an example, there's a sense in which I have to wake up. I have not to go out and, do my jog, or not to go out and throw the ball around with my kids. Don't think that I'm not doing this, right? I have not to spend time in front of the television, and I have to read and write and prepare notes for weeks, and then film and shoot and edit and upload. There's this huge sense of burnout that happens. There's a burnout that happens in caregivers, in participants, and you'll find this in their narratives, possibly, but there's definitely a burnout that happens on our end as researcher, right? Because as researcher, what's motivating our research is the care. So you have to be able to navigate. I've been doing too many lectures. I've been doing too much research. I've been reading too much. I've been preparing too many notes. It's Christmas break. I'm vegging out and playing Skyrim until my eyes bleed, and I'm drinking Jack Daniels till the bottle's empty, which is exactly what I did, and I'm doing. But when you get to my level, you just do a little bit of both. But the idea is I have to take care of myself, right, as researcher, and you have to take care of yourself as researcher. My research is about terrorism and violence and genocide and atrocity, and all I read is about people who get off on killing other people. That's some horrible, horrible research, and I read a lot of that stuff every single day, every day for the past 10 years. That's all I read. Imagine having all of that in your head. You got to step away from it, right? So the idea is, yes, I am in love with the discipline. Yes, I care about educating other people, but there's a sense in which I gauge my responsibilities, my perceived responsibilities, and you as a researcher should as well. I just want to end with a passage um,